At my husband's funeral, my own son handed me termination papers, orchestrated by his wife. 27 years of my life, gone for outdated methods. He even signed them. I just stared, a quiet fire igniting deep within. You won't believe what happened next. Like, share, and tell me where you're listening from. Let's see how far this story reaches. The scent of lilies still clung to my black dress, a faint, sweet reminder of Arthur's funeral just days prior. My husband, the bedrock of my life, was gone, leaving a chasm in my heart that no amount of condolence could fill. I had barely processed the finality of his absence when the next blow landed, not with the gentle tap of sorrow, but with the brutal force of a wrecking ball. It was a Tuesday morning. I had gone into Hartwell and Associates, the firm where I had dedicated 27 years of my life, expecting to find solace in routine. Instead, I found my son, Julian, and his wife, Serafina Thorne, waiting in my office. Serafina, with her perfectly coiffed blonde hair and a smile that never quite reached her eyes, held a manila folder. Julian stood beside her, his face a mask of strained neutrality. A cold knot tightened in my stomach. "Eleanor," Serafina began, her voice falsely sweet, "we need to talk." I sat, my hands clasped tightly in my lap, dread blooming in my chest. Serafina slid the folder across my polished mahogany desk, its weight a physical manifestation of my impending doom. Inside were documents, coldly official, stating my immediate termination from the firm. My gaze flickered to Julian, searching for some flicker of concern, some hint of the pie I had raised. But his eyes were vacant, averted. Serafina continued, her words clipped and devoid of empathy. "New leadership requires new directions, Eleanor. Your methods, while effective in their time, are simply outdated. Outdated. 27 years of loyal service, of building the very foundation of this company alongside Arthur, reduced to a dismissive shrug and a vague accusation. The insult stung, a venomous bite that spread through my veins. Outdated? I managed, my voice a thin whisper. I've been a managing partner for over a decade. I helped build this business from the ground up. Julian finally spoke, his voice unnervingly even. "Mother, things have changed. Serafina has innovative ideas. We need to move forward." The words felt rehearsed, devoid of any genuine conviction. He couldn't even meet my eyes. My own son, my flesh and blood, was sitting there, complicit in my professional execution. The betrayal was a fresh wound, far more agonizing than the grief for Arthur. I turned to Julian directly. "Is this what Arthur would have wanted? For you to dismiss me like this, after everything?" His jaw tightened. "Father wanted what was best for the company. And frankly, Mother, you were never truly cut out for this business. You always relied on him." His words, so deliberately cruel, echoed Serafina's earlier dismissal, a synchronized strike to my very core. They had planned this. They had rehearsed this. Serafina then presented the termination documents, pointing to Julian's signature at the bottom. The minimal severance package she offered was a final insult, barely enough to cover a few months' rent. As if the financial blow wasn't enough, she added, "Oh, and about the house. Arthur's will stipulated it was to be shared, but Julian and I have decided to sell it. It's too large for your needs now, and we require the capital for new investments in the firm." The house, my home, the place where Arthur and I had built our lives, raised our son, celebrated holidays, mourned losses. It was to be taken from me, too. A cold, hard lump formed in my throat, choking off any protest. They had brought 2 small cardboard boxes. "For your personal effects," Serafina chirped, her tone indicating this was a generous gesture. 2 boxes for 27 years of my life. Diplomas, awards, photographs, meticulously organized files. Memories of late nights and triumphant successes, all reduced to what could fit into 2 pitiful containers. As I slowly gathered the few items they allowed me to take, the weight of their indifference pressed down on me, heavy and suffocating. My hands trembled, not with weakness, but with a silent, simmering rage. Once I was out of the office, out of that building that no longer recognized me, I called my younger sister Bethany. Bethany, who had always been the practical one, the one who pulled herself up by her bootstraps. I expected comfort, a listening ear, perhaps an offer of a spare room for a few weeks. Instead, her voice was clipped, impatient. "Eleanor, honestly," she sighed into the phone, "you always relied on Arthur. You need to stand on your own 2 feet now. Life happens. Just get another job." The phone went dead, leaving me in stunned silence. The last vestige of family support crumbled, leaving me adrift. The house sale was swift, almost brutal. Within weeks, my carefully curated life was packed into rented storage units, the keys to my home handed over, and my world condensed into a tiny, impersonal studio apartment on the wrong side of town. The transition was jarring, a dizzying descent from comfort to stark reality. Every morning I woke to the unfamiliar silence, the absence of Arthur's side of the bed, the knowledge that my son had orchestrated this exile. I started looking for work, sending out resumes, leveraging my extensive network. But doors kept closing, calls went unanswered, interviews led nowhere. I couldn't shake the feeling that Serafina's reach extended beyond Hartwell and Associates, subtly poisoning my name, ensuring no one would take a chance on a 63-year-old woman suddenly out of a job. The savings dwindled rapidly. My small severance package vanished, eaten by rent and basic necessities. One morning I looked at my bank balance. Barely $100 left. Desperation gnawed at me. I was Eleanor Vance, a woman who had once commanded respect, managed multi-million-dollar deals, and hosted elegant charity dinners. Now I was facing destitution. I swallowed my pride and signed up to drive for Uber. The thought of ferrying strangers around felt humiliating, but it was a lifeline. I learned the streets of the city, not from the back of a luxury car, but from the driver's seat of my own modest sedan, the one Arthur had bought me for our anniversary years ago. The irony was a bitter pill. Sometimes my route would take me past my old neighborhood. I'd catch a glimpse of my former home, its windows glowing with new, unfamiliar lights. Serafina had wasted no time redecorating, changing the landscaping, erasing every trace of me. Each passing was a fresh stab, a stark reminder of everything I had lost. The life I knew, the comfort I had taken for granted, was a ghost haunting the streets I now drove. One particularly grueling evening, after hours of endless driving, my phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Serafina. My heart hammered, a mix of apprehension and faint hope. Perhaps she felt a flicker of remorse. The message read, "Hope you are enjoying sharing food with dogs on the street." The words hit me like a physical blow, stealing my breath. It was a vicious, calculated cruelty designed to break me completely. I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles white. A single tear tracked a path down my cheek, not of despair, but of pure, cold fury. The cruel text from Serafina was a turning point. It stripped away the last vestiges of hope I clung to regarding Julian, solidifying the bitter truth that they were united in their malice. The tiny studio apartment became a prison, the rent a constant threat hanging over my head. My Uber driving continued, a grueling cycle of late nights and early mornings, the meager earnings barely covering my spiraling expenses. Some nights, too exhausted or too late to bother with the trek back to my studio, I'd pull over in a quiet residential street and sleep in my car, a humiliating secret I carried close to my chest. The seats, once a symbol of freedom and comfort, now felt like a bed of nails. One particularly rainy Tuesday, the city lights blurred through my windshield. I was tired, my body aching from hours behind the wheel. As I approached a familiar intersection, the traffic light ahead of me glowed green. I pressed the accelerator, eager to complete my last ride and finally rest. Suddenly, a blinding flash of white and a deafening screech of tires pierced the night. A delivery truck, a behemoth of metal, barreled through the red light on the cross street. A rogue missile launched directly into my path. The impact was catastrophic. A sickening crunch of metal, the shattering of glass, and then a violent jolt that threw me against my seatbelt, followed by the crushing weight of twisted steel. Darkness enveloped me, a merciful oblivion from the immediate pain. When I next opened my eyes, a fluorescent haze filtered through my blurry vision. The air was thick with the scent of antiseptic, and the insistent beeping of machines pulsed around me. I was in a hospital bed, my head throbbing, my body screaming in protest with every shallow breath. A kind face framed by soft brown hair leaned over me. "Miss Vance, can you hear me? You're in the emergency room." It was Nurse Elaine. She gently explained the damage: a concussion, 3 broken ribs, and a dislocated shoulder. My car, she added softly, was a total wreck. Gone, just like everything else. "Do you have family we can call?" Nurse Elaine asked, her voice laced with genuine concern. A hollow ache settled in my chest. I stared at the sterile white ceiling. Family, Julian, Bethany. The words felt like ash in my mouth. What would I tell them? That their outdated, toxic mother was lying broken in a hospital bed? No. No, I whispered, the lie of bitter taste. No family mine. The truth was, I felt utterly, completely alone. A few days later, a social worker named Maria sat by my bedside. She was a warm, empathetic woman, her eyes filled with a quiet understanding that bypassed my carefully constructed facade. She helped me navigate the labyrinthine process of applying for emergency assistance, explaining options for temporary housing and medical aid. "You mentioned you don't have family," Maria said gently, reviewing my intake forms. "Are you sure? A son, perhaps?" I hesitated, the truth catching in my throat. My pride warred with a desperate longing for comfort. "Yes," I finally admitted, my voice barely audible. "I have a son, Julian, but he wouldn't come." The words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken pain and betrayal. Maria simply nodded, her gaze compassionate, and moved on. She understood more than I had said. When I was finally discharged, patched up but still aching, the harsh reality of my situation slammed into me. No car, my only source of income, gone. No home, just a tiny studio I couldn't afford. And now a mountain of medical bills looming over me, a cruel testament to my bad luck. The hospital had given me a list of homeless shelters. I called the first one, my voice trembling. "Full," came the flat reply. The second, the third, all the same. The city was overflowing, its safety nets stretched thin. That night, I found myself on a cold, hard bench at the bus station, my meager belongings in a worn duffel bag clutched tightly to my chest. The sounds of late-night buses, the murmur of weary travelers, the chill of the concrete seeping into my bones. It was a new low, a descent into an abyss I never thought I'd see. A kind security guard, noticing my shivering frame, approached me. "You can't stay here, ma'am," he said, his voice surprisingly gentle. "There's a shelter a few blocks east. Sometimes they have space. It's called Haven of Hope." He gave me directions, a small flicker of humanity in the encroaching darkness. The walk was excruciating, each step sending a jolt of pain through my broken ribs. My dislocated shoulder throbbed, a constant reminder of the accident. When I finally reached Haven of Hope, the building looked imposing, grim. Inside, it smelled of disinfectant and despair, a potent combination that made my stomach churn. I filled out the humiliating forms, answering questions that stripped away my dignity, reducing me to a statistic of misfortune. I was assigned a bunk in a large, open room with about 20 other women, the air thick with their collective stories of loss and survival. My bunk was a thin mattress on a metal frame, tucked between 2 others. I lay there, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of snoring, restless shifting, and quiet weeping. A woman on the bunk below me, Consuela, a kind-faced woman with tired eyes, noticed me. "Rough night?" she asked softly. I simply nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. "My family threw me away too," Consuela offered, her voice a low murmur. "Said I was a burden after I lost my job." A wave of unexpected camaraderie washed over me. "Mine too," I confessed, the words of release. "After my husband died, my son and his wife." Consuela sighed, a sound of shared understanding. "It's a special kind of pain, isn't it? To be cast aside by your own blood." My days at the shelter blurred into a monotonous cycle of job searching, filling out applications online at the public library, and returning to the shelter each evening. The rejections piled up, each one a fresh reminder of my age, my lack of recent experience, the invisible sabotage I suspected Serafina was orchestrating. Hope became a fragile, fleeting thing. One evening, exhausted and disheartened, I checked my phone. A notification popped up from Facebook. Serafina had tagged me. My fingers trembled as I clicked on it. The image that loaded shattered what little peace I had left. Serafina, resplendent in a shimmering gown, stood beside Julian, both of them beaming. They were at a glittering gala, a world away from my grimy shelter bunk. Around Serafina's neck, sparkling under the harsh lights, was my diamond necklace. The one Arthur had given me for our 20th anniversary. The one I had loved more than any other. The caption beneath the photo was a final devastating blow. So grateful for family who understand that some people are just toxic energy that needs to be removed from your life. And then I saw it. Underneath the callous words, a small blue thumbs up icon. Julian had liked the post. He wasn't just complicit, he was celebrating my homelessness, my ruin, my erasure. He was celebrating my status as toxic energy. My heart, already bruised and battered, cracked open, and a cold, chilling resolve began to seep in. The shame of applying for food stamps was a bitter pill, one more indignity in a seemingly endless string. The welfare office was a stark, impersonal building, filled with hushed desperation. As I waited in line, my eyes downcast, I heard a familiar voice. "Eleanor, is that really you?" I looked up to see Mrs. Lee, my old neighbor from the affluent street where I had lived for decades. Her eyes, usually sparkling with neighborly gossip, were now wide with genuine shock. My face burned with embarrassment. "Mrs. Lee," I stammered, trying to compose myself to conjure some semblance of my former self. "My dear, what are you doing here?" she asked, her gaze sweeping over my worn clothes. "Julian told everyone you were traveling, seeing the country, taking a well-deserved sabbatical after Arthur passed. He said you always wanted to explore." A cold wave washed over me, replacing the heat of shame with an icy realization. They weren't just discarding me, they were actively erasing me from their narrative, replacing my truth with a convenient, palatable lie. "Traveling the country," I repeated hollowly, a sardonic chuckle escaping my lips. It was a complete fabrication. A neat little bow on the package of my disappearance, ensuring no one would question my sudden absence from their privileged lives. That evening, back in the noisy confines of the shelter, another text from Serafina landed. This time it was a photo of my old bedroom. Not as I had left it, but completely stripped and redecorated. My cherished antique dresser, the comfortable armchair where I used to read, the delicate porcelain figures Arthur had bought me on our travels, all gone, replaced by minimalist cold furniture. The caption read, "Finally cleared out all that old lady clutter. So much more space now." The words were a calculated strike, designed to wound. Old lady clutter. My life, my memories, reduced to an inconvenience to be swept away. But instead of breaking me, something hardened inside of me, a stubborn, fiery core that refused to yield. They wanted me to disappear, to wither away in the shadows of their new, opulent life. But I wouldn't, not yet. Not while a flicker of fight remained. I would not let them win. A final text from Serafina arrived days later, concise and utterly devoid of remorse. "Hope you are comfortable with your new lifestyle. You chose this path. Now live with it." The message was a declaration of war, a definitive severing of any imagined ties. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. 2 months crawled by. Through sheer determination and countless hours, I managed to buy a beat-up, used Civic, a far cry from my old sedan, but it was reliable. I was back to driving Uber, navigating the city streets, each turn a battle against exhaustion and despair. The shelter remained my home, a constant, grimy reminder of my precipitous fall. One drizzly afternoon, the app chimed, signaling a pickup from the city's most luxurious hotel, the Grand Imperial. I pulled up to the opulent entrance, feeling out of place among the gleaming limousines and impeccably dressed doormen. A distinguished-looking man, tall and slender, with a shock of silver hair and sharp, intelligent eyes, emerged from the revolving doors. He looked to be in his late 70s, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit. He settled into the back seat, and I confirmed his destination. As I started to pull away, he leaned forward slightly. "Pardon me," he said, his voice surprisingly robust for his age, with a hint of an old-world accent. You look incredibly familiar. Have we met before? I glanced in the rearview mirror. I don't think so, sir, I replied, my voice weary. I'm Eleanor. I drive for Uber. He studied me for a moment longer, a thoughtful frown creasing his brow. But you're Eleanor Vance, aren't you? He pressed. I knew your grandfather, Frederick Sterling. My mind reeled. Frederick Sterling, my maternal grandfather. The grandfather my mother, Evelyn, had always described as a simple factory worker who had died young, leaving them with nothing. My grandfather? I asked, confused. Frederick Sterling? But he was a mill worker. He died when my mother was very young. I don't think he knew anyone prominent. Alistair Finch, for that was his name, chuckled softly. Oh, he was much more than a mill worker, my dear. He was a brilliant man, a visionary. We co-founded Finch Sterling Technologies together back in 1970 through a small electronics company at first, out of a garage. But Frederick had the mind of a genius. I was speechless. Finch Sterling Technologies. The name resonated. It was a behemoth in the tech industry, a global powerhouse. I knew of it, of course, everyone did. But to think my grandfather, the quiet, almost mythical figure from my mother's faded stories, was a founder? It seemed impossible. My mother, Evelyn Sterling, always said he worked in a mill, died with nothing. I repeated, a tremor in my voice. She never mentioned any company. Alistair's expression softened. Ah, Evelyn. Yes, she passed away, 8 years ago now, didn't she? I'm sorry to hear that. I've been trying to locate Frederick's family for nearly 20 years. After Frederick's untimely death, Evelyn simply vanished, and the trail went cold. But his will, it was very clear. He paused, looking directly at me through the rear-view mirror, his gaze intense. Frederick owned 50% of Finch Sterling Technologies. His will stipulated that upon his death, his shares would pass directly to his legal heirs. And as far as my research indicates, Eleanor, you are his sole surviving direct descendant through your mother. My heart began to pound a frantic rhythm against my ribs. 50%, I managed to croak, of Finch Sterling Technologies? The words felt foreign, unbelievable. Alistair nodded, a slight smile playing on his lips. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a sleek tablet. He tapped a few times and then turned the screen toward me. It displayed a detailed financial statement, dense with numbers and corporate jargon, but one figure stood out in bold, undeniable clarity. As of this morning, Alistair stated, his voice calm and precise, Finch Sterling Technologies is valued at $1.6 billion. He paused, letting the figure sink in, which means, Eleanor Vance, your grandfather's 50% stake is worth $800 million. The world tilted. $800 million. My breath hitched. The grimy shelter, the humiliating job searches, the cruel texts, the endless struggle, it all coalesced into a sharp, blinding moment of revelation. From the lowest rung of despair, I had suddenly, inexplicably, been catapulted into a reality beyond my wildest dreams. The number, $800 million, reverberated in my mind, a jarring discord against the grim reality of my current life. It felt utterly surreal, a cruel trick of the light, a scam meticulously orchestrated to prey on the desperate. I gripped the steering wheel, my hands clammy. This has to be some kind of mistake, I managed, my voice strained. Or a joke. I'm sorry, Mr. Finch, but I don't believe you. Alistair Finch, however, remained unfazed. His gaze was steady, his expression filled with a quiet, paternal kindness that slowly began to chip away at my hardened defenses. I understand your skepticism, Eleanor, he said, his voice gentle. It's a lot to take in, but I assure you, this is no joke. I've been searching for Frederick's descendants for a very long time. And then, unexpectedly, the dam broke. The weight of months of humiliation, betrayal, and struggle surged to the surface. Words tumbled out of me, a torrent of raw, unfiltered truth. I recounted everything. My forced retirement from Hartwell and Associates, the callous dismissal by Julian and Serafina, the crushing financial blows, the accident that cost me my car, my subsequent homelessness, the indignity of the shelter, the soul-crushing job rejections, and the ultimate, heartbreaking betrayal of Julian, liking Serafina's cruel social media post. Alistair listened intently, his initial kindness slowly giving way to a look of profound trouble, his brow furrowed with concern and a growing indignation. He didn't interrupt, allowing me to pour out the entire sordid tale of my downfall. When I finished, the car was silent, save for the hum of the engine and the distant city sounds. "And your mother, Evelyn?" Alistair asked softly, breaking the silence. "Did she ever mention any legal documents? Any will or trust related to your grandfather's business?" "Never," I confirmed, shaking my head. "She painted him as a tragic figure, a poor mill worker who died young, leaving her with nothing. She always struggled financially, lived modestly. If she knew about a fortune like this, she never let on." Alistair sighed, a deep, sorrowful sound. "It seems, then, that Evelyn made some unfortunate decisions regarding the trust established for her by her father. Decisions that have had profound consequences for you, Bo." He paused, his gaze fixed on the road ahead. "Eleanor, you are legally entitled to one of the largest fortunes in the technology sector. This isn't just a discovery, it's a monumental shift in your entire life." He reached back into his briefcase, pulling out a faded cream-colored document. "This is a copy of Frederick's will," he said, handing it to me. "It clearly states his 50% stake in Finch Sterling Technologies, held in trust to be passed down through his direct lineage. After his wife Beatrice, it was to go to Evelyn and then to Evelyn's children." My fingers traced the elegant script, seeing my grandfather's name, then my grandmother's, and then Evelyn Sterling. It was real. This wasn't a scam. This was my legacy, hidden from me for decades. "I need you to promise me something," Alistair said, his tone serious. "Do not tell anyone about this yet. Not your son, not your daughter-in-law, not your sister. No one. This information needs to be handled with extreme care." He then handed me a business card. "This is for my personal attorney, Attorney Maxwell. He's the best. Call him first thing tomorrow morning. He'll explain everything in detail and guide you through the next steps." "Did my family know about this business?" I asked, a sudden chill running down my spine. The thought that Julian or Serafina might have known and kept it from me was almost too much to bear. "Not to my knowledge," Alistair confirmed. "We lost track of Evelyn after Frederick passed. She moved, changed her name for a time, made it very difficult to locate her. It's only been through diligent, decades-long work by my legal team that we finally traced you through public records and then through your employment at Hartwell and Associates." He smiled faintly. "It seems your old firm's records finally did you a good turn." The next morning, my heart still a frantic drum, I called Attorney Maxwell's office. The receptionist, cool and efficient, informed me that Mr. Finch had already contacted them. I was scheduled for a 2 p.m. meeting. The law office was everything I remembered from my past life and everything I was no longer. Gleaming marble floors, hushed tones, original artwork adorning the walls, and a panoramic view of the city. I felt utterly out of place in my thrift store jeans and faded blouse, a stark contrast to the impeccably dressed professionals gliding silently through the corridors. Attorney Maxwell was a formidable woman, sharp-eyed and intelligent, with a calm, reassuring demeanor. She greeted me warmly, leading me into a spacious office overlooking the city. She began by confirming the partnership agreement between Frederick Sterling and Alistair Finch, a 50-50 split, equal ownership from day one. Upon Frederick Sterling's death, Attorney Maxwell explained, consulting a thick file, his shares passed to his wife, Beatrice Sterling, your grandmother. When Beatrice passed, the shares, held in trust, were meant to pass to your mother, Evelyn Sterling. She paused, her expression becoming more serious. However, it appears Evelyn never claimed the inheritance. Our records, corroborated by extensive investigation, show that after Beatrice's death, multiple legal notices were sent to Evelyn Sterling's last known addresses. These notices, informing her of the trust in her inheritance, were all received and signed for. My mind reeled. My mother knew, and doing wrong. All this time she knew, and she had kept it a secret that had condemned me to this life of hardship, while she herself had lived in modest comfort, never touching the immense fortune that was hers. The revelation was both shocking and deeply painful, a different kind of betrayal. For 43 years, Eleanor, Attorney Maxwell continued, that 50% share held in trust has grown. compounded, invested, managed by Mr. Finch and his team with the utmost care and responsibility. She looked at me, her eyes kind but firm. As of today, your family's 50% share of Finch Sterling Technologies is valued at $827 million. The figure was even larger than Alistair had quoted, $827 million. The sound of it echoed in the luxurious office, a symphony of numbers that promised a complete reversal of fortune. My world, which had been crashing down around me for months, suddenly spun back into dazzling, unimaginable focus. Hold on tight because this story is just getting started. If you're captivated by Eleanor's incredible journey, make sure to like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss a single twist. You won't believe what happens next. $827 million. The number hung in the air, a shimmering, impossible truth. I, Eleanor Vance, who had been sleeping in my car, scavenging for food, and enduring the indignity of a homeless shelter, had actually been one of the wealthiest people in America, completely unaware. The irony was a punch to the gut, a betrayal more profound than any Serafina could inflict. My mother, Evelyn, had known. She had lived her modest life, allowing me to struggle while this colossal fortune sat unclaimed, rightfully ours. It's unbelievable, I whispered, the words catching in my throat. My mother, she just let it sit there, she never told me. Attorney Maxwell's gaze sharpened, her expression becoming more measured. Actually, Eleanor, it's more complicated than that. Your mother, Evelyn Sterling, didn't just let it sit there. She actively worked to prevent the claim from being processed. My head snapped up. What do you mean? After your grandmother Beatrice's death, when the inheritance was meant to pass to Evelyn, our records indicate a series of very aggressive legal challenges were initiated. Evelyn hired an attorney named Silas, a rather disreputable character as it turns out, to contest the inheritance. She claimed the will was fraudulent, that your grandfather's signature was forged. Attorney Maxwell paused, letting this sink in. Her allegations were baseless. Frederick's will was ironclad. So she tried to discredit her own father's will? I asked, utterly bewildered. Precisely, Maxwell confirmed. It was a messy, protracted affair to resolve the ongoing legal harassment and prevent Evelyn from tying up the company in endless litigation. Finch Sterling Technologies agreed to a settlement in 1980. They paid Evelyn a lump sum of $150,000 to drop all her claims and cease all legal challenges. $150,000. My mother had effectively sold off $827 million for a mere fraction of a percent. The air left my lungs. She gave it all away for $150,000? The disbelief warred with a crushing wave of anger. How could she? How could she have been so short-sighted, so utterly selfish, to gamble away our entire future for such a pittance? It gets worse, Attorney Maxwell continued, her voice grave. That settlement was illegal, Eleanor. Evelyn could not legally relinquish the claims of future heirs, namely you and your sister, Bethany. The trust was established for direct descendants. Her actions only secured a payment for herself by deceptively terminating her own claim. But your claim as the next in line remained intact, simply undiscovered until now. And to make matters even more difficult, she added, Evelyn used a false address when signing that settlement, a postal box that was closed shortly thereafter. It rendered her virtually untraceable for years, which made it impossible for us to contact her or you and your sister about the trust. A new chilling thought pierced through my shock. My sister, I breathed. Bethany. She would have been entitled to half, wouldn't she? Just like me. Attorney Maxwell nodded slowly. That's correct. Bethany was also cheated out of her rightful inheritance, her half of that $827 million. The layers of deceit, manipulation, and greed were piling up, forming a sickening tower. My mother's actions, and now the realization that Bethany had also been robbed, changed everything. Bethany, who had coldly told me to stand on my own 2 feet while sitting on a fortune she didn't know she had. Eleanor, Attorney Maxwell said, her voice dropping to a low, serious tone, Mr. Finch and I have long suspected that Evelyn may not have acted alone. Attorney Silas, her lawyer at the time, was known for his connections to certain powerful, unscrupulous individuals. Individuals who might have found it very convenient for a vast inheritance to remain unclaimed or to be settled for a paltry sum, allowing others to benefit from the secrecy. My mind immediately jumped to Julian and Serafina. They had orchestrated my downfall, stripped me of my livelihood, my home, my dignity. Could they have known? Could they have been somehow connected to this decades-old conspiracy, deliberately keeping me in the dark, while they plotted their takeover of my life? The thought was terrifying, yet it also ignited a spark of cold fury. Julian and Serafina, I said, my voice barely a whisper. They forced me out of my business, my home. Could they have known about this? Could they have been trying to make sure I had nothing left, so I couldn't fight back if I ever found out? Attorney Maxwell's expression became very serious, her eyes fixed on mine. That, Eleanor, is precisely what we intend to find out. We will launch a full-scale investigation into every aspect of this. We will unearth every truth, every deception, every person who might have benefited from keeping this secret hidden from you and your sister. She leaned forward, her voice firm. Eleanor, are you prepared to fight for what is rightfully yours? For what was taken from you and from your sister? I thought of Serafina's cruel texts, her triumphant smile as she wore my diamond necklace, Julian's cowardly silence, the utter indifference etched on his face. I thought of the cold shelter, the empty fridge, the humiliation, the desperation. The fear and exhaustion that had plagued me for months slowly coalesced into a steely resolve. The time for meek acceptance was over. Yes, I said, my voice clear and unwavering, ringing with newfound strength. Yes, I want to fight. I want to fight for every single penny. The next 3 weeks were a blur of legal meetings, document reviews, and a growing sense of dread as Attorney Maxwell's team unearthed layers of deceit. Each revelation was a fresh wound, twisting the knife of betrayal deeper into my heart. The 48-year-old conspiracy, hidden in plain sight, slowly began to unravel, exposing it a tapestry of lies woven by those closest to me. Mrs. Vance, Attorney Maxwell began, her voice unusually somber during our latest video call, the investigation has uncovered something truly disturbing. The conspiracy, it seems, involved more than just your mother. It involved your entire family. My breath caught in my throat. My entire family? What are you saying? After your mother, Evelyn, passed away 8 years ago, our firm, Finch Sterling Technologies, sent a letter attempting to locate her heirs as per the trust agreement. This letter, Eleanor, was received by your sister, Bethany. A cold premonition seized me. Bethany, my own sister. She ignored it, didn't she? Just like my mother. Attorney Maxwell shook her head slowly. No, Eleanor. Bethany didn't ignore it. She responded. She claimed to be Evelyn's only surviving child. And to support her claim, she provided a meticulously forged death certificate for you, complete with fake obituary clippings and even false funeral records. The world tilted on its axis. Faked my death? My own sister? The air was suddenly thin, suffocating. Bethany, she faked my death, I whispered, my voice barely audible, the words a bitter echo in the silence of my tiny studio. Yes, Maxwell confirmed, her face etched with grim determination. For the past 8 years, Eleanor, your sister Bethany has been collecting your half of the inheritance dividends. That amounts to over $12 million. $12 million. Bethany, who had told me to stand on my own 2 feet, had been living off my stolen fortune for nearly a decade. The shock was profound, the betrayal deeper than I could have ever imagined. It wasn't just my mother, it was my sister too. But how, I stammered, my mind racing. How could she have gotten a fake death certificate? That requires a lot of connections. Attorney Maxwell's eyes narrowed. Exactly, Mrs. Vance. Bethany didn't act alone. These forged documents, the systematic covering of tracks, it required inside help. And we believe we've found the source of that help. Serafina's father, Victor Caldwell. The name hit me with the force of a physical blow. Victor Caldwell, Serafina's father, a prominent, well-connected figure in the city. What does he have to do with this? Victor Caldwell, Eleanor, was a longtime business partner of attorney Silas, the same unscrupulous lawyer your mother, Evelyn, hired decades ago to contest your grandfather's will. It appears the Caldwell family, through Silas, became aware of the massive, unclaimed sterling fortune. They saw an opportunity. They orchestrated this entire plan, initially with Evelyn and then with Bethany, to keep you, the rightful heir, from ever claiming what was yours. They profited indirectly through various shell companies and investment schemes off the growth of the trust, while keeping your side of the family in the dark. The pieces of the puzzle, grotesque and horrifying, began to fall into place. The cruelty, the calculated dismissals, the ease with which Julian and Serafina had stripped me of my life. It wasn't random. It was deliberate. And Julian, I choked out, a fresh wave of nausea washing over me. Did Julian know? Attorney Maxwell took a deep breath, her expression growing even graver. Eleanor, this is the hardest part. Our investigation indicates that Julian knew. He knew about the inheritance, or at least the potential for it, since he married Serafina 7 years ago. It appears he married her because Victor Caldwell promised to help him gain access to this family money, once you were completely out of the picture. My son, my only child, he had married for money, money that was rightfully mine. Money he knew was mine, and he had conspired to keep it from me. The devastation was absolute. The entire scheme, Eleanor, Maxwell continued, her voice heavy with the weight of the revelations, including stripping you of your position at Hartwell and Associates and forcing you from your home, was meticulously planned. The goal was to ensure that by the time this inheritance eventually surfaced or became legally undeniable, you would be utterly desperate, without resources, without influence, too broken to fight back. The house, I murmured. The memory of Serafina's redecorations, the old lady clutter text flashing through my mind. My home, they sold it. The house was bought by one of the Caldwell's shell companies, Maxwell revealed, her voice devoid of emotion. And then, in an act of calculated mockery, it was sold back to Julian and Serafina for half its market value. They have been living in your home, Eleanor, paid for with the very fortune they were actively trying to keep from you while you were on the streets. A scream tore through my mind, trapped behind my lips. They were living in my home, with my money, while I was homeless. The sheer audacity, the cold-blooded evil of it all was unfathomable. Then Attorney Maxwell delivered the final, most devastating blow. And Eleanor, your car accident, it wasn't random. My heart stopped. The flashing lights, the screech of tires, the crushing impact. What are you saying? The delivery truck driver who ran the red light was an employee of a company owned by Victor Caldwell. The police report, the initial investigation, it was altered, covered up. She paused, her gaze locking onto mine, filled with an unwavering resolve. They tried to kill you, Mrs. Vance. The words echoed in the silence, each syllable a hammer blow to my soul. Tried to kill me, not just steal from me, not just ruin me, but end my life. Serafina's cruel texts, hope you're enjoying sharing food with dogs on the street. Hope you're comfortable with your new lifestyle. They weren't just insults, they were celebrations. Celebrations of their perceived victory, their belief that they had successfully erased me. But I was still here, and now I knew. We will reclaim everything, Eleanor, Attorney Maxwell declared, her voice steel. Every last penny, plus punitive damages for fraud, for emotional distress, and for attempted murder. We are looking at a total claim exceeding $1 billion. She laid out the legal strategy. We will file multiple lawsuits immediately, civil suits for fraud, breach of trust, and wrongful enrichment. We will also present our evidence to the authorities, seeking criminal charges for fraud, conspiracy, and attempted murder. Simultaneously, we will obtain court orders to freeze every single asset connected to Julian, Serafina, Bethany, and Victor Caldwell. Their bank accounts, properties, investments, everything. They will not be able to move a single cent. The cold fury that had been simmering within me for months ignited into a roaring inferno. My family had not only betrayed me, they had tried to murder me, but they had failed. And now, armed with the truth, I would rise. We've already started, Mrs. Vance. Attorney Maxwell's voice resonated with cold satisfaction. Federal marshals served warrants early this morning. Bethany's assets have been frozen, and the house, your house, has been seized. Julian and Serafina are currently being questioned by the FBI. A strange calm settled over me, a stillness born from the depths of profound shock and burgeoning vindication. They knew. They finally knew. The truth meticulously hidden for decades was now exposed. They would know that the toxic energy they sought to remove was very much alive, and that the lives they had built on stolen money, on land, and on attempted murder were irrevocably over. I want them to understand, I said, my voice steady, betraying none of the turmoil within. I want them to understand exactly what they've lost. Every single penny, every asset, every ounce of their false privilege. Attorney Maxwell smiled, a rare, hard glint in her eyes. Consider it done, Eleanor. We will make sure they understand the full cost of their actions. The next 6 months were a whirlwind. Legal proceedings moved with a speed and efficiency I never would have thought possible, fueled by the irrefutable evidence gathered by Alistair's team and Attorney Maxwell's relentless pursuit of justice. The 48-year conspiracy, the layers of fraud, the callous attempted murder. It all unfolded in courtrooms and headlines, a staggering tale of familial betrayal. Today, I stood in the penthouse office of Finch Sterling Technologies. The sprawling space offered breathtaking panoramic views of the city, a stark contrast to the grimy shelter I had called home just months prior. Alistair Finch had insisted I take this office. It's time the Sterling name returned to the company, Eleanor, he had said, his eyes twinkling with pride and satisfaction. The legal fallout was swift and devastating for my family,